I was thinking about today, and I thought the thing that would be most important, based on my age, endurance, and long-term ubiquitous presence, that perhaps I would talk about both my personal memory, a set of, I call them postcards, they're vignettes, moments of struggle, and also the collective one, because I look around the room and some of you were there when these things happened. So I'm going to call them postcards from the past to the future. My first postcard is called A Generation Apart, The Difference. This took place in 1989 at the New York Museum of Modern Art. I was asked by Reva Castleman to organize 2 panels within the second Contemporary Art in Context series. On the panels included Lorna Simpson, Kinshasa Conwell, David Driscoll, Luis Jimenez, Inverna Lopez, C. Peter Jameson, Fei Chang, and others. Our task was to discuss issues of equity. We were introduced to the panel by an opening statement from Richard Oldenburg, then the director of the New York Museum of Modern Art, 1989. No issue is worthier of discussion than the situation of artists of diverse culture seeking opportunity of recognition in this country who are Latin American, African American, Native American, Asian American. There is agreement that whatever encouragement these artists have received during the last 20 years, 1969 to 1989, has not produced the equitable status that they sought. My observation, discussion is not action. Postcard number 2, entitled Not Again. Cara Chicano Art, Resistance, and Affirmation. This is 1990, Washington, D.C., the National Endowment of the Humanities. Our catalog proposal is reviewed by 4 separate panels in NEH, each time approved, each time rejected, and vetoed by Lynn Cheney, wife of Dick, who decides that the term Chicano is inappropriate because it is too political and would prefer that we changed it to Mexican American, which would make our acronym CARA totally useless. My observation is she missed the point. Art historical knowledge is needed. A number 3 postcard is The Decade Show, 1990, and the Latino High Life, sometimes called the Decade of the Latino. We get a decade every once in a while. It never really works, but the Decade Show Frameworks of Identity, a collaborative endeavor with the New Museum, the Studio Museum of Harlem, and the Museum of Contemporary Hispanic Art under the leadership of Marcia Tucker, Kinshasa Conwell, and Nilda Peraces. In that same era, Latino artists had several community-based incubators. This is in New York. Museo del Barrio under Susana Torruella Leval, Intar under Inverna Lopez, and at the same moment, we slid into obscurity yet again. So observation, not all efforts are sustainable, or perhaps the desire to be sustainable. Postcard number 4, 1993, Whitney Biennial, A Dialogue on Whiteness. The exhibition highlights Daniel Martinez lapel pins, I Can't Imagine Ever Being White. In the Master's House, Spit in His Face, Glenn Ligon's installation of Robert Mapplethorpe, Renee Green's piece on German hip-hop. Observation, be careful what you wish for. We know the aftermath of that exhibition, sometimes referred to as the door slam shut. Number 5, the diversity panel for the Association of American Museum Directors, some of who were here today. In Chicago, 1993, I refer to this one as Rotten Tomatoes, so I leave you to understand what that might mean. I always said, if those guys had had a basket of Rotten Tomatoes, we would have been covered with tomato sauce. It was organized by our beloved late Marcia Tucker. It resulted in a book called A Different Voices, A Social, Cultural, and Historical Framework for Change in the American Art Museum. Included in the speakers were Skip Gates, Irene Winter, Tomasi Barafrasto, Jack Chan, and myself. We discussed the aesthetics, cultural values, and community models of art and culture. Observation, first steps are the hardest. The following year, they went to Hawaii, and it was very blissful. So we took the first blows. Postcard number 6, the Caribbean Cultural Center African Diaspora Institute, the series called Cultural Diversity Through Cultural Grounding. This series ran in 1989, 1991, and 1993, largely in New York, although we did meet at Olga's house in Miami Beach at one point. Yes, there she is. In the era of appropriation, reclaiming first voice meant distinguishing our efforts from the mainstream through cultural grounding. Martha Moreno Vega's visionary leadership led to the diverse collective that produced the book Voices from the Battlefront, Achieving Cultural Equity. My observation, collective struggle is critical. So these postcards are a smattering of moments that took place in the 80s and 90s when we struggled for power, for equity, for access, and most of all, to change the nature of aesthetic knowledge and to frame the possibility of a new America within the work that we did. And so I remind you, starting in 1989 all the way through to the mid-1990s, these struggles continued and they have reasserted themselves again. And I'm happy to have lasted long enough to be present for the next go-around. Si se puede.